Friends of FanDuel, what is going on? What is happening? Ryan Williams here, joined by the great Jim Sonis, and we are here talking the FanDuel Fantasy Q&A. It's the Monday night Week 5 preview show. Jim, how are you doing today?
I would be a lot better, Ryan, if I had not had some things break against me in yesterday's slate. There was a lot of funkiness going on. We were talking before the show about how okay, we had some Tom Brady that went well. We're feeling good going to the afternoon slate because I had every other quarterback was going then. It was Dak, Kyler, Lance, and stuff like that. And then it all kind of came crashing down. I wasn't as high as I should have been on the Browns-Chargers game, so kind of bummed. How are you doing?
Yeah, man, I'm definitely bummed, and you're always going to feel bummed when you don't game stack a game that goes over 85 points or whatever.
Right.
It ended up being. I think 89 points is what the final ended up being, and that's just absolutely absurd. Especially when you're looking at 27-21, I believe, going into the fourth quarter, just absolutely crazy. But that's what's great about Monday nights, Jim, is that we can tilt Sunday. And maybe even Sunday night if you had Chiefs like I did.
I did too.
And then we could come into Monday night and win the money back. So that's what we're here to do with you guys today. We've been doing this all year long. It's the Week 5 DFS Monday night fantasy Q&A. I appreciate everybody who's coming into the chat. Those who are joining us on Facebook, we appreciate you. YouTube, you guys got to make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Give us a like, just a quick like of the video. We appreciate that as always. I see the people coming in now. DJ, how you doing? Andrew, how you doing? And Jim, they want to hear us talk about this Monday night football game. We got the Ravens going against the Colts. And if you can remember back in week 1, and actually before I digest this, guys, Ryan Williams, you can find me on Twitter at RyanAlexander_W. You can find Jim at Jim Sonis. If you guys aren't following us already, just please do so, especially Jim. Jim's got all the content. He's got all of the snap shares, target shares. I feel like that's all you do, Jim, is just give the people the goodness that's going on throughout the day. And those are the tweets that I like that I can go back and use.
That's because when I deviate from that, dumb stuff comes out, like really bad Marcus Mariota tweets. Like they're all bad. So I got to limit it and make sure it's not like, oh, this is my opinion on something like a quarterback. I got to keep those away. So just trying to deviate from the things that make me look very stupid down the line.
Fair enough. But all good stuff nonetheless. And we are happy to talk with you guys today on the Monday Night Preview Show. We got 30 minutes of goodness here. And like I said, we're going to preview the Ravens and Colts game. And I was going to say, Jim, as you can recall, we had done a Monday Night Preview Show together in week 1 with the Ravens.
Yeah.
Not an exact matchup, so to speak, just because of the team on the other side. But we still have yet again Lamar on a single game slate. And that's kind of where things start on a single game slate when you have Lamar. What do we do with Lamar? Do we play him at MVP? Do we, not play him at all, as what happened in that Raiders game? You actually could have won all the money if you just decided not to play Lamar. How are you feeling about this slate, and what can we start with here as we talk about the Ravens side of the ball first, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the thought process of not using Lamar makes sense because probably 80% of lineups will have Lamar in them. So if he doesn't come through, you're basically cashing already at that point because you're facing 20% of the field. But I think in this game where it might be lower-ish scoring and things are kind of spread out in terms of the target shares on the Colts side of things, outside of Michael Pittman, that kind of makes it tougher for someone to unseat Lamar as being the MVP. So to me, Ryan, I feel like my thought process here is to use Lamar Jackson at MVP and then try to find ways to be different elsewhere. I know that's not a super adventurous take, but I do feel like that's kind of the way I need to play things. What about for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to go back to the well again, as is always with Lamar. I never feel comfortable fading Lamar. Yeah. And there's always ways that we can attack the Ravens while still having Lamar, as you're saying, just being a little bit different. And I do think the MVP, putting him into the MVP slot makes sense because I would only look to pair him with maybe one guy there or two. And that's different than how we kind of attack the quarterback position that are, pocket passers or guys that don't have the rushing upside that Lamar has. Because if Lamar's MVP, you're expecting him to at least rush for 1 touchdown, possibly 2. And that's just going to limit the scoring that these other guys can have. So if you have a guy like Mark Andrews or Marquise Brown that have these big games where they catch 2 of the touchdowns, but Lamar does the rest, you might not need another Baltimore guy. So by taking 3 of the other team, you're automatically just being different in that approach. And that's kind of how I feel about things. I see Andrew in the chat here. He's asking about Jonathan Taylor. Andrew, we'll definitely get to the Jonathan Taylor side of the ball, because I think it comes down to how you want to attack the Colts side is if you think this game stays close. And if you think this game stays close, or, if Indy gets up big and then Lamar has to bring him back, I do think that Taylor makes a lot of sense at MVP. I think he's going to be utilized in close games. We can talk about Nyheim Hines a little bit later and what game scripts make sense for him, because I do actually love Nyheim Hines. And I probably won't have a lot of Taylor. But if I was playing Taylor, I'd play him at the MVP spot.
I think that that's the key, is if you have a lineup where you assume that the Colts win, like that's perfect for Jonathan Taylor. It probably implies they're in the red zone. And going back to last week, you can pull up the red zone numbers for the Colts here last week in that week 4 game where they had control against Miami. Taylor had 6 of 20 red zone chances for the Colts in that game, 114 yards from scrimmage. Still, the snap rate was not super high, but it wasn't terrible either, I wouldn't say. So I think that, let's say you assume that Indy wins this game, maybe they win it by 7 points, let's say, in your mind.
Sure.
I think that's a good script for a Jonathan Taylor MVP lineup. And I think that in that script, I'd prefer him at MVP over Carson Wentz. Would you agree with that as well?
Yes. I probably will have little to no Carson Wentz today. Which again, we've talked about this numerous times on the showdown or the single game slates, where it makes you want to pay for the quarterbacks because the pricing is stagnant, which we love, right? So we can just have the pricing be in there. And also the touchdowns essentially usually come from the quarterbacks. Most of the scoring is just heavily valued through them. And then we have a situation here where it's like, okay, you can play Jonathan Taylor if you think the Colts are going to be in the game or possibly winning. But if they're not, and if the Ravens are running away with this, like Nyheim Hines has looked great in games when the Colts have been down. You can see his use. He's clearly just not being used when they are in control, and he's being used heavily when they are down. And so by having him on Lamar Jackson teams, if I'm playing Lamar Jackson MVP, that's an approach where I would like to go. I see Keith Warner in the chat here on Facebook, kind of talking about the work there as it relates to him and Taylor. And I think that there is a lot of merit there depending on how you're playing the Ravens side of the ball.
Yeah, I think that I would agree. I think that it's the question that I have about Hines is, or I had going in before I dug in, was, okay, is there yardage there? Because the red zone work isn't always there, and I'm not sure what the touchdowns will be like. But you look at the recent games for Hines, like the games this year, he actually has had yardage when they've gotten down. He had about 80 yards in scrimmage in week 1. He had about 80 once again in week number 3. And I believe that Seattle game, they got down pretty early. The Tennessee game, they were down as well. So in those scripts, he's out on the field a lot. Last week didn't get as much work, but that's because they were ahead of Miami pretty much right away. So I think that situation that sets up well for Nyheim Hines. Now, I'm not sure he's my favorite value play. I think that there are some guys who might be a little bit missalaried for this week. But I think that Hines works well in a setup where you think that the Ravens get a lead early.
Yeah, and he just is one of those guys. I mean, it's tough to trust these pass catchers too, right? So we got like Michael Pittman, Zach Pascal, Paris Campbell, who, probably, I think Paris Campbell's only seen 10 targets or something like that on the year. So, I mean, he's just a Twitter darling in the fantasy community, but it would be a single game slate for Paris Campbell to break out tonight and really crush our hopes and dreams there. But yeah, Nyheim Hines always just seems to be kind of like that guy with Carson Wentz. It's a low ADOT, kind of a safety blanket type of thing. The tight ends I know are banged up with Jack Doyle at least, and then Mo Cox got the red zone work, but he's just the one that I feel like I can trust the most in a negative game script for the Colts.
I think that I would agree as being the guy, kind of the primary one. But you mentioned Mo Cox. I do kind of dig him a little bit. The snap share. I mean, it's probably because Doyle got banged up, but like, he also played well, I thought. And at some point that has to matter. And I think it was interesting because they used Ali Cox a lot, despite it being a positive script last week. So I think that Mo Ali Cox on the Colts side is pretty interesting at $7,000 if I want more flexibility. I think Hines is the better option on the Indy side, but I think that Mo Ali Cox worth consideration, even with Jack Doyle getting a full week of practice in this week. He said at 1 week practice, that was because of rest. He was not injured at all. But I think that even with that being true, I think that Mo Ali Cox, interesting still at $7,000.
Yeah, no, he is interesting. And what's going to be interesting too, Jim, is if you don't. So, I mean, the salaries based in of itself with just Lamar being at 17,000 and then the next closest one being Carson Wentz. And if you don't want to play Carson Wentz, and I'm talking about I only want to play Lamar MVP with possibly one pass catcher on the Colts, then I'm looking at leaving a ton of salary on the table tonight. And I guess maybe that's why I play tournaments, is because I do these things that are kind of just off of the radar and outside the box. But I think that'll be interesting just to kind of see where builds land and if people are comfortable with leaving $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 of salary left on the table. Because you can make some interesting builds with some of these players who are on the low end, but could find themselves in decent spots depending on how this game goes.
Yeah, I think that looks pretty interesting for sure. I think that the question that I have is like, where do we view these Colts guys relative to specifically someone who I think is very interesting is Sammy Watkins. I think Sammy Watkins, the guy I was alluding to before, is being like aggressively undersalaried. Kyle was asking about that before, and like Watkins is $7,500. He actually leads the Ravens in targets so far this year,
which is that.
Pretty wild.
Incredible.
So I think that Watkins is interesting both in the DFS side of things, $7,500, but also in the prop market. Watkins' yardage prop is 40.5, I believe. Let's pull this up here. Oh, yeah, wow. 40.5. He has exceeded that in every game so far this year. That does not mean, bad line, because things can just break that way. But with Rashad Bateman not being activated yet, I think he might have gotten bumped down under the assumption that Bateman would be active for this game. That's not the case. They didn't activate him from IR yet. So I think that Watkins, both in single game DFS and the prop market, undervalued right now relative to Marquise Brown and Mark Andrews.
Yeah, I absolutely love Sammy Watkins this week, and I've talked about him before, Jimmy. Sammy Watkins is a guy of mine. I got a weak spot, sore spot for him. But yeah, love that he's leading the team in targets. And also we got to, Marquise Brown he's so interesting to me because he's so explosive. But at what point are the drops going to catch up to him? And I don't try to say that, the drops are going to factor in much. I mean, he's a supreme talent. We see how that's worked out when Jamar Chase, we were talking about the drops in preseason, and now this dude's a rookie stud coming on Randy Moss's records. But, I think maybe there is some merit to that, where if he just doesn't get going today, maybe we see Sammy Watkins in a viable spot. And you're looking at the Colts, who have allowed 8 wide receiver touchdowns in 4 games thus far this year. So, I mean, one of these guys has to play. Now, what makes it interesting, Jim, is that Miles Boykin was activated today that I saw before we came on. So you imagine they did that because Bateman's not yet healthy, but he's been on IR, and maybe Miles Boykin, he's been a deep threat the past couple of years. Maybe he gets going. But I do think, taking a wide receiver who's not Marquise Brown from the Ravens is fun in tournaments.
Yeah, are you ranking Boykin highest among the like non-Marquise Brown, non-Andrews, and non-Watkins guys? You got James Prochet, who was really fun in college, who I think had 6 targets last week, looked pretty good on those 2. You got Devin Duvernay, and now you got Miles Boykin. Are you ranking Boykin highest of that group? Because I don't know how to read them at all, honestly. It's a tough group for me.
I mean, the fact that they're activating him at this point in the week makes it a little bit interesting to me, because why activate him on a Monday when you have a game, when you could just wait till next week? So I feel like they're going to at least have him out there, whether that's, just a couple shots just to get him acclimated in the game or what. He is interesting to me of those other 2, just because I feel like he's not going to be on people's radars as we just got this going.
Yeah, I mean, like, look at the injury tag. Like, he's still listed as being on IR on FanDuel, but they did activate him today. So when
Right.
people pull up like this module, they're going to see, oh, he's still on IR, but he got activated. So he's going to be probably good. I'd assume he'd be active for tonight. I would bet that one of these receivers is inactive, whether it's actually, they just toggled it off while we were
They
talking.
just
So
yeah, they heard you, Jim, and they said we'll make amends to that.
good timing.
But still, you're looking at 5K, right? So like,
Right,
how many people are taking the time to scroll down there? Because
right.
like I said, pricing is just that in and of itself, where you don't need to necessarily pay down here because you're going to be able to fit whoever you want into a lineup.
Right. And realistically, what's the separation between him and Prochet or Duvernay, who are both at 6,000? Like, why not just leave the extra $1,000 down? Like, you're not
Right.
losing that much in terms of projection. I'd bet one of those guys is inactive. I'm kind of curious to see who it'll be. Duvernay plays a lot of special teams, so I don't think he'll be inactive, but
Right.
I'd bet one of them probably is. I just don't really know right now who that will be.
Yeah, it could be James.
Yeah.
Prochet.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay, Prochet. I'll go with that. It sounds cooler.
Yeah.
So yeah, it could be James Prochet, but yeah, it does make for interesting builds. And so, guys, we're here. We're talking Week 5 Monday Night Football preview show here on the FanDuel channel. Thanks to everybody who's tuning in. We got to get to our guy DJ Jim, who's always rocking with us here on the Facebook channel, and he's talking about thoughts of Lamar MVP, and he's stacking him with Hollywood, Mandrews, Pascal, and a Sammy Watkins lineup. So basically just saying the only bring back I'm going to have is one Colt, and I'm just stacking Lamar with all the guys. Now, the problem that I see, or I don't want to say problem, DJ, because it's tournaments, anything could happen. So I definitely would love that lineup, necessarily not in a vacuum, but it does make sense because you're saying, okay, if Lamar, maybe he doesn't get the rushing touchdowns, they're just able to take advantage of this defense through the air that wide receivers have been able to do. And we've seen Marquise Brown drop deep passes after deep passes the past couple of weeks. If those get going, they get in the red zone, Andrew scores one, then they get Sammy Watkins on a deep pass. It's possible that could pay off.
Basically, you're just assuming that Lamar goes nuts the passer, which could happen because, like,
Right.
if you watch him play football, throwing the ball this year, he's been awesome. Like, he's been a really good passer. So I think there's a route to that happening. And I think the other thing that helps is I don't think these running backs really have upside. Like, Latavius is going to get work, but because he's not catching passes, he needs to go kind of nuts as a running back to really hurt you for not using him. Latavius is $10,000 for tonight. Like,
Okay.
I don't know, like, will Le'Veon Bell eat more into his role? I don't think so necessarily, but like, I think to me, the pass catchers on Baltimore might be more attractive than Latavius. So I don't mind going all in on the passing game, but you do need like a 90th percentile Lamar passing game for that to really pay off. That could happen because, again, he's playing really good football right now. But you do need to, you're kind of banking on like an outlier type performance from a passing perspective to get all those guys to come through.
Right. And that just, I think more times than not, that will not pay off, which makes me worry about that.
Yeah.
And I have done that in like when it just depends on the team for me. So like Kansas City Chiefs, they were playing, that wasn't on a single game slate, but yes, I like taking Lamar and multiple people just because Kansas City could possibly push them in that way. But we've seen Kansas City just allow all the rushing equity to the quarterback position, so they don't even need to pass against them. They can just rush. They're leaving lanes open for Josh Allen and Lamar and whoever they're playing. It's Jalen Hurts.
You might have scored 3 touchdowns on them. You know,
I
you were matched with Daniel Sorensen. I like your odds, Ryan.
I definitely could have. So no, that's what makes it fun in those matchups. But in a matchup where there's 7-point home favorites, I think that I have to lean with a grain of salt on that one. Let's kind of talk about some of these other options here from the Baltimore side. We kind of touched on the Colts pieces, but we have LB Patterson, who's also joining us on Facebook, who is asking about Andrews at the MVP slot. And Andrews is, it seems like he's been pretty decent this year. It just hasn't paid off. Like, I think he's, the snaps are there. The targets have been there over the past couple of weeks, so you definitely love what you're seeing, but they just haven't been, and maybe that's the way games have gone or game scripts have gone. They just haven't needed to lean on him in the past, and there are more options for them to throw to. I mean, Sammy Watkins coming in here, like you're saying, leading Marquise Brown in targets, so there's other options that they don't have to lean on Mark Andrews as much. And Mark Andrews at MVP, you're really saying that he's going to be the one to score and get over that 100-yard mark tonight against the Colts, and that's kind of tough for me to see. I'd rather play him in the flex if playing him at all.
Yeah, I think it'd be hard for me to get to him at MVP too, because you're asking him to outscore Lamar, which I think is what you're saying. What you're saying when you do that is you're assuming that Lamar is not going to do a lot as a rusher, because when it's like a Tom Brady situation, like let's say he has just Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, you could very well see Evans outscore him or Godwin outscore him. But when it's a running quarterback, it's a lot tougher for the pass catchers to outscore that guy unless they get like literally everything. So I think that Andrews' usage lately has been great. He's up to 22% of the overall targets. He hasn't been getting a lot of deep work, but at least some. As far as the red zone stuff goes, 3 red zone targets last week, still no touchdowns yet this year. So maybe we see some positive regression there. But I agree with you, Ryan, where if I'm using him, I think that he's best suited to be in the flex spot as opposed to MVP.
Yeah, it just the thing about it is the touchdowns, right? So like if he's getting the red zone work, potentially you could probably see it pay off. But outside of in between the 20s, I just think that they're going to be able to take advantage of this defense through the wide receivers, and he might not get there enough to be MVP. But just so many dynamic pieces elsewhere in this game as well too.
Who do you prefer between Andrews and Brown?
I think I'd prefer Brown in a vacuum.
I think I do too.
Yeah, if you're putting the pressure on me, I'm gonna say Brown. I think it does. I think it is interesting to build Lamar teams with 2 pass catchers that don't include Brown in tournaments, because I think that will separate you from the pack,
and you are getting
you from dupes.
You're getting like 24-ish% of the targets if you go Andrews and Watkins. Like 48% or so of the targets on the team if you go with those two together. So that's actually not bad. And that's not a bad pairing. And you save a lot of salary that way too.
Yeah, absolutely. You put those 3 guys in, you're looking at 11, 7, 5. So you throw in Carson Wentz, and then you can still play Zach Pascal. You could play Naheem Hines, put salary on the table. So if you are looking at getting Carson Wentz in there just because of his salary, it makes a lot of sense. We got some people asking in the chat about kickers tonight and if we like them at all. Grim Fan, thank you, Grim Fan, for coming in here on the YouTube channel. I'm always inclined to play Justin Tucker just because this dude is just absolute money, and we need to look no further than the game where he kicks the game winner against against the Bengal, or who is it?
The Lions,
the 66, the Lions. Yes, the Lions. Man, heartbreak for the Lions on field goals.
Oh, but it's so good if you're a Lions fan. I know that it's heartbreaking in the moment, but like, just keep pushing for that tank, man. Like, it's a short-term sadness, long-term happiness.
Short-term sadness for Dan Campbell, for sure.
Right. I do feel bad for him. Yeah, I feel bad for him and the players, but like, long-term, it's for the best.
Yes, it is for the best. But yeah, Justin Tucker is always a guy for me that will always be in consideration. If I'm multi-entering, if I'm making single lineups, I probably wouldn't be up to put him in there. Just because even with the Colts, and they've struggled over their past couple of matchups, I think only scoring, and even the Ravens, they've been limiting their opponents in good games to 17 or less, and the Colts just haven't been getting to a number where you feel comfortable about the offensive weapons. But if they are just the Ravens putting pressure on them, they will be forced to throw. I think we could see one for sure, if not 2 usable scores from the Colts side that could outscore Tucker's. At most, he's had 17 FanDuel points this year. So if he's getting around the 7-11 range, I'd probably be more comfortable putting a skill position player in there.
Yeah, I think it depends on how you think the game goes. Like if you think, so it's 7.5 point spread right now. If you think that the Ravens cover that, Tucker makes a lot of sense because it means you're getting less production from the Colts guys. I would still prefer Watkins over him, but like that would put him above Pascal puts him above Hines, puts him above
Right.
Mo Alley Cox and guys like that. So it really depends on how you think the game goes. If you think the Ravens cover, then Tucker, I think to me is probably not automatic, but he's pretty darn close if you assume the Ravens cover in this game.
Right. Yes, and it could be interesting too if they, if you think it's a grinded out game. I mean, the Colts are going to look to just get advantage and take points when they can get them.
Right.
It's, especially if they are, if it's a neutral kind of game and the Ravens aren't just putting up points, they're kind of getting 3 and outs on them or just making mistakes. You could maybe play Blankenship on the other end, and think that, hey, any time that the Colts have an opportunity to score, like, we just need to put points on the board if the Ravens don't have a 2 touchdown lead on us or more. So he could be an interesting piece as well too, to kind of pair there. We have about 5 minutes left to talk with the people, Jim, and I definitely want to make sure we hit on things that are on the FanDuel Sportsbook, as I think this game is a fun one for props. I've put together a single game parlay as I was tilting the rain delay last night, which I actually need to log in to see it. But I was going to say that we were talking about Sammy Watkins earlier. We're getting a lot of things in the chat about Sammy Watkins. And if you feel confident about Sammy Watkins, for him to be the leading wide receiver game is 950 plus 950 on the FanDuel Sportsbook. That is a very intriguing bet for me.
I actually messaged our colleagues Brandon Gadula and JJ Zachariason about that exact prop earlier on today, because I was like, okay. I was kind of scrolling through stuff. We were talking about Zach Pascal a little bit. I know you're talking about him too, and I don't know where it was, but like just stumbling upon that number specifically, I think it was 980 later.
Okay. Yeah, if you go into the receiving props.
Yeah, okay, cool.
I couldn't believe that.
But like, that's awesome. I think that's a tremendous number to get him at. Yeah. Plus, it's down to 900. So actually, it looks like there's been some action on Sammy Watkins.
There's been some action. Yeah, people are stumbling upon that number. Maybe that just happened now, just like with the Miles Boykin tag that's come up. Everybody who's watching the show is getting action on that. But
the millions of people watching have decided to bet Sammy Watkins immediately, and I don't hate it. I like it a lot.
even if it was, even if it got into the 800 range, I still think that's a lot of value that you can get.
I honestly think that Michael Pittman's not totally out of play there, plus 460 either, just because his target shares have been so good on the Colts side of things. Maybe you think that the Ravens get ahead early and the Colts are in a pretty pass-heavy script. That could set up well for Pittman. I still think at their current numbers, like if I assume you couldn't get in at plus 980, I think that I would still favor Watkins at plus 900, but I think the Pittman's number 2 to me at plus 460.
Yes, no, Pittman is the guy that I'm looking at playing in single games on the other side, getting some action on. And I actually did make a same game parlay with Zach Pascal last week, because this dude is just, I don't know what's going on with Zach Pascal, but he will not go away. He has a rapport with Carson Wentz to whatever degree that might be. And now I'll play him. And like I said, this will be the Paris Campbell breakout, and it'll be Campbell and Pittman that win everything for everybody. But Zach Pascal is always interesting to me. I like getting props on some of these Colts guys of the alternate lines, because I think, you're getting plus money when you get into the 60-yard range, 70-yard range on some of these guys. And if you think that the Colts are going to be down by 2+ scores at any point in the game, in the third quarter, or even at the start of the fourth, I think these guys could pay off on that end as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Pascal, so he's plus 270 for an anytime touchdown. It feels like that's all he does is like score touchdowns. Like he's like Tim Patrick, where like that's all he does is just like constantly in the end zone for whatever reason. I will say though that we were talking about Pittman before. He's also kind of interesting because his anytime touchdown prop is plus 240, and that seems really low for a guy, or really long for a guy who keeps getting that much work. So I initially was drawn towards Pascal at plus 270, but then I saw Pittman at plus 240, and I kind of don't hate that one. Any read for you on those?
So Pittman plus 240, I absolutely love there. Who is your other one?
I was assigned to him and Pascal plus 270. I think I'm on Pittman.
Oh yeah, Pascal.
At those relative numbers, but
Pascal, like you said, he's always finding the end zone touchdown magnet. So that would be the one I would lean to first, just because you're getting favorable odds there.
I think
But
he's
Pittman,
at like 38% of the red zone targets this year too, so that makes sense.
wow, that's interesting. So he would definitely be in play. Pittman, I love for getting yardage props on him. Like I said, I think you got to get into, I forget where his line is, but I think you got to get into the 70, 80 range on him for plus money. I think it was 66.5 when I saw it. Might have been different, but either way, I do love any yardage props that concern Michael Pittman. And then your guy, Mo Ali Cox, anytime touchdowns plus 600. If Jack Doyle's not healthy, Jim, that might be some action to get on. That's 6-1 odds there. Not looking too shabby at all.
I don't mind that either. I like it. I'm into it.
Yes, love that. So yeah, guys, make sure you are checking out all the action that the FanDuel Sportsbook has to offer. We got some nice odds boosts going on. Marquise Brown to score a touchdown and the Ravens to win at plus 230 is an odds boost. And the Ravens and Colts to each score one rushing touchdown and one passing touchdown, which can be kind of tough from the Colts side of things. But hey, if you guys like Jonathan Taylor today, get some action on that. That's plus 250. Jim, you got any final words to leave with the people for tonight?
I just think that, Ryan, we sit back, we pray for Sammy Watkins to do something and hope it's not one of those Sammy Watkins games that makes us all tilts. They happen. They definitely do happen, but I'm hoping tonight is not that night.
Hopefully we get the game that makes everybody else tilt as well for not having him. I did see a quick thing of somebody asking about Kiki QT. We actually got a lot of questions about this. Kiki QT, I really don't have any thoughts on him. I think it's a pretty thin play. He's 5,000.
I'm not even sure if he'll be active tonight. Like, I don't think that's a lock that he'll be active.
I know they've been running guys like Ashton Doolin a little bit, who's been getting some snaps, and just with the tight ends there being healthy. If somebody was missing or out, I shouldn't say missing. If somebody was out, that might be interesting. But I probably won't be getting there.
I wouldn't assume he'll be active. Like that would be my concern there.
Fair. So Grin fam, just make sure you are in tune with the injury reports as they're coming out. And if you see him listed as inactive or on the injured list, don't try and play him. If he's not there, hey, take a shot on him. He's going to be low owned. Have fun with that in the tournament. Guys, it's the Week 5 Monday Night Preview Show with Jim Sonis. You can find him on Twitter at Jim Sonis and myself at Ryan Alexander _W, Ryan Williams. We are here every Monday night previewing the Monday Night Football show. We hope you guys enjoy this Monday night with the Ravens and Colts. Get that money, and we'll catch you next week for Week 6 show. Until then, peace.